once a ribbon of color, a symbolic animal of the region, and a tourist attraction. But lesser flamingos are a species characterized as near threatened. That puts them a step above vulnerable and 2 steps away from endangered, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. But their numbers are reportedly decreasing, and they recently stopped using one of their 4 breeding sites on the African continent. It was at an artificial dam in South Africa. For years, it's been polluted by sewage, and now the water's become so toxic that conservationists and lawyers say the birds have deserted the breeding grounds. Untreated sewage is a problem across South Africa. A city manager near the dam told Reuters News that thieves stole equipment from the local sewage plant, leaving it inoperable. Sludge is flowing into the water, upsetting its balance of nutrients. And even though fixing the plant is urgent, both for the environment and for the economy, as the flamingos bring in tourists, the official says his city doesn't have the $6 million needed to make repairs. So that leaves the lesser flamingos with one fewer place to breed at a time when they need to increase their numbers in Africa. Hi, I'm Carl Azus for The World from A to Z, and we're thankful to have you watching this Wednesday. A new group has started distributing food to people in the war-torn territory of Gaza. Why it exists and why it's controversial are what we're explaining next. First, some background. Gaza is a Palestinian territory controlled by Hamas, a Palestinian militant group. From Gaza, Hamas launched a terrorist attack against Israel on October 7th, 2023. The Associated Press reports about 1,200 people were killed, most of them civilians, and 251 others were taken as hostages. Israel then declared war on Hamas and launched attacks on sites within Gaza. Since then, Hamas says more than 52,000 have been killed in the territory. The group does not say how many were fighters and how many were civilians. International observers say a humanitarian crisis has developed in Gaza, with an unsteady and insufficient flow of food and aid to people who need it. A new system is being put in place to distribute food. It's run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, and that's supported by both the U.S. and Israel. Until now, groups led by the United Nations have been in charge of this. But Israel says Hamas has abused the system, taking away supplies intended for civilians. The UN says there's not a lot of that going on, that the new foundation will give Israel too much control over food, and that the GHF won't be as effective in distributing it. But the foundation expects to eventually meet most food needs in Gaza and says it's independent and non-political. For its part, Hamas has told Palestinians not to deal with the GHF. Hunger remains an ongoing problem in the territory.
On Gaza's shattered ground, young girls find a sense of freedom. Despite the dangers, girls like Rimas meet at the YMCA in Gaza City to skate. They practice for 5 hours twice a week. Captain Rajab, as he's known, started skating back in 2014. A few years later, he began teaching, and now so many kids show up, they have to take turns using one of the group's 6 remaining skateboards. Rajab, Rimas, and a handful of other volunteers are passing on the sport to the next generation, hoping normalcy will one day return.
وحاليا الان يعني احنا مفروض منطقتنا اخلاق في الزيتون بس يعني عادي بنطلع خلص يعني نقول توكلنا على الله.
And their numbers are growing all the time, despite the risks.
لا سمح الله اذا انا صار لي شيء انا لي رساله موجه رساله كل هذول اللاعبين اللي احنا بندربهم انه مسيرتي انا تضل مستمره والرياضه هذه مش حتموت هذه الرياضه حتضل مستمره ان شاء الله.
On this date in world history. This was the historic date when a solar eclipse reportedly ended a war. The Medes and the Lydians Americans had been fighting for years, and they were in the middle of a battle when an apparent solar eclipse darkened the day. The two sides took it as a sign they should call it quits, so historians say they did and ended their war. The event on May 28, 585 BC came to be known as the Battle of the Eclipse. On this date in 1830, U.S. President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act. Its aim was to relocate Native American tribes in the Southeast to unsettled land in the American West. There were a number of treaties that followed, but the forced removal of the Cherokee Nation, which refused to treaty to leave its land, resulted in thousands of Cherokee deaths and became the Trail of Tears. And on this date in 1987, a 19-year-old West German pilot landed a small plane in the Soviet capital. Matthias Wust had flown there without permission from anyone. Unique circumstances and events allowed him to land in heavily defended Moscow without being forced or shot down beforehand. His flight triggered firings in the Soviet military and helped Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev make reforms. Wust was imprisoned for the act, but released early as a goodwill gesture.
World knowledge. What is the largest island in the Mediterranean Sea? Sicily, Malta, Cyprus, Crete. Measuring more than 9,900 square miles in area, the largest Mediterranean island is Sicily, part of the nation of Italy.
Torre del Greco has been a hub for coral jewelry production for 200 years, but some types of coral are rare, and now the industry is left trying to maintain a difficult balance: the preservation of the craftsmanship of artisans and the survival of the coral reef itself. The first coral processing company in Torre del Greco was established in 1805, and today it's home to around 200 others with a total of 2,000 employees. But turning the precious coral into jewelry is more than a business here. It's part of the town's identity and culture.
Those who work there, but also any citizen of Torre del Greco, have coral in their blood.
Red coral craftsmanship has taken place in the Mediterranean region for centuries. Historically, coral was exchanged for spices and other goods. It reached distant peoples in Asia by way of what's called the Silk Road trading route. These cultures loved the red color and saw it as a symbol of good luck. Cameo jewelry is also popular in southern Italy. The process involves carefully cutting a design into a shell and then carving out the negative space. As with coral, cameo artistry requires years of practice. The Francesco Degni Art Institute is a specialized art school dedicated to the preservation of artisanal work. Here, students and professors work together in coral and cameo engraving laboratories, designing creations that are then exhibited in the school museum.
It is a great satisfaction to be able to witness so many working techniques used in the past and which still continue to be handed down today.
Coral has a rich history and continues to hold high value in the art world.
Beacon is a city in central Illinois. It's where you'll find Washington Intermediate School, and that's where Miss Nelson's class is watching from the Prairie State. We're stopping by the Empire State again today to give a big hello to Mrs. DeAngelone's class. W.T. Clark High School is watching from Westbury, New York. And in the Cornhusker State of Nebraska, it's Mr. Newman's or Neumann's class that's with us from Ralston High School. It's in the city of Ralston. A series of kickboxing matches were held at a recent event in China, and nowhere else, at least not yet, would you find more competitors with an iron jaw. This was billed as the world's first fighting tournament for humanoid robots. They were controlled remotely, and sometimes they missed. A lot. Sometimes they stumbled. Sometimes this happened, which thankfully isn't something we've seen in a human kickboxing event. But through a sequence of various fighting moves and getting back up after being knocked off their feet, the robots showed a punchier side of technology people hadn't seen before. Critics might have called their style mechanical, thought their moves robotic, said they needed an oil change, laughed if they blew a gasket, heckled that their batteries were low, or panned the match as revolting. But the competitors all got a kick and a good charge out of it without becoming boxed in or grinding into gears, and some found it electric that not a single one of them got gassed. I'm Carl Azus. Wednesdays are mid, and it means the world to have you watching the world from A to Z.